My mother's last words to me were, "Never trust a man's promises, trust what's written on paper in black and white." Back then, I didn't understand. Not until my fiancé slammed a prenuptial agreement in front of me, one that stated the 600,000 yuan I paid for our down payment was of a no-strings, unconditional gift. If we divorced, I would walk away with nothing. Chapter 1. My mother was hanging on to her final breath, her frail hand gripping mine so tightly it hurt. In her cloudy, fading eyes, a rare moment of absolute clarity broke through. "Anna. I have nothing else to leave you. I've been foolish my whole life. But I can teach you one thing. Never trust the pretty dreams a man paints for you. If you must trust something, trust what's written, plain, unmistakable, in black and white." That sentence became her last wish. And the first rule of my life. My name is Anna. I'm 27, a graduate of one of Eastport City's top law schools. The year I graduated, I held offers from every major firm in the city, my future looked limitless. Then a single sheet of paper, a cancer diagnosis, dragged me straight back down to reality. To take care of my mother, I walked away from a million-yuan career path and took a small job at a community legal aid center near home. 5 years passed. I buried my mother. And I saw the worst sides of humanity. I saw husbands pull the oxygen tubes off dying wives to hide assets. I saw children scatter their parents' ashes while fighting over inheritance. I saw the filth buried inside marriage and blood ties. And I forged myself into steel, tempered by years of handling the ugliest, pettiest grievances imaginable. Chapter 2. To most people, my job was basically the equivalent of being an underpaid, overworked neighborhood auntie with zero status. But to my fiancé, Chad, that was precisely my greatest selling point. Chad, a client manager at a securities firm, was an utterly ordinary man desperate to climb a few social rungs through marriage. And a woman like me, a top school graduate, made him look good in his social circle, a tasteful, high-end accessory he could proudly show off. A woman with no family background, a soft temper, and a simple, harmless job? To Chad, that was the perfect recipe for an ideal, obedient wife. In other words, easy to control. At gatherings with friends, he loved to pull me close, one arm draped around my shoulder, and introduce me in a tone that was equal parts bragging and patronizing. "This is my fiancée, Anna, Masters in Law. She's too kind for the dirty money culture of our industry, so she works at a legal aid center. Basically charity." He'd pause just long enough for everyone nearby to hear his next line. "As for me, I'm the one who makes the money and supports the family, so she can focus on being my little angel who doesn't need to touch the real world." Every single time, he made it sound tender and noble. His friends would praise him for being dependable, for choosing a woman who wasn't after money. And I could only hold that perfect smile under their admiring gazes, while my heart tightened like someone was stitching it shut from the inside. My training, my principles, my profession, all reduced in his mouth to a kind-hearted and angelic, as if my worth only existed because he provided for the family. Late at night, I would try to talk myself out of the hurt. Maybe he just didn't know how to express himself. I'd unlock my phone. My wallpaper was a renovation mock-up I had secretly saved, a bright, cozy little home I imagined for our future. I once believed that if I endured this phase long enough, all the discomfort would be washed away by the happiness waiting ahead. Chapter 3. But the slow, simmering kind of PUA Chad used on me, his mother delivered it in a far more blatant form. Every time we met, my future mother-in-law would start with, "Anna, sweetheart, why are you working so hard? Look at our Chad, just last month he got a 200,000 bonus. That's what, 2 years of your salary? And that job of yours sounds nice when you tell people, but it doesn't bring in real money. After you two get married, you should quit early and focus on taking care of Chad. That's what matters most." At the dinner table, Chad always played the peacemaker. He would cut in with a smile. "Mom, Anna has her own goals." Then he'd turn to me, squeeze my hand tightly under the table, and silently mouth, "Don't mind her. Old folks talk like that." What could I say? All I could do was swallow my food, and swallow every argument stuck in my throat. They didn't understand that the small cases I handled could mean a child's chance at a better future, or a family's last thread of hope. All they understood was money. Chapter 4. The first real crack between us appeared when we started looking for a home. The down payment for the marital apartment was $1 million. I put in $600,000, $500,000 from my mother's life insurance, and $100,000 from my 5 years of savings. When I sent Chad the transfer receipt, I added a deliberate note. Chad, this is everything I have. It'll go toward our down payment. He replied in seconds. Got it, babe. You worked so hard for this. Chad's family contributed $400,000. On the day we viewed the apartment, the sales agents hovered around Chad and his mother the entire time, hyping up the location, the school district, and the future value as if the place were made of gold. I trailed behind like an irrelevant assistant, squeezed out of the circle. Excuse me, I finally found a chance to speak. I'd like to ask about the shared area ratio, the property rights term, and the actual layout of the pedestrian-vehicle separation. My voice wasn't loud, but the room fell silent anyway. Chad's mother frowned and cut me off immediately. Oh, Anna. These are things men should worry about. Don't these details give you a headache? Chad quickly stepped forward, wrapped an arm around my shoulder, and said in a tone that was both doting and dismissive. Yeah, babe, I've got it. You just worry about making our home look pretty later. The two of them worked in perfect harmony. I looked at them, and a dull pressure rose in my chest. Chapter 5. In the end, we settled on a place. But the day we went to sign the purchase contract, I noticed something that made half my blood run cold. On the thick stack of papers, under buyer, there was only one name. Chad. I held the contract, lifted my head, and looked at him. Chad seemed prepared for this. He immediately pulled me aside, wearing that familiar smile, tender on the surface, helpless underneath. Babe, let me explain. I qualify as a first-time homebuyer, right? The mortgage rate is discounted. We can save a few hundred every month. Putting it under my name is just to save money for our future. But the down payment. I put in $600,000. I stated it calmly, just the facts. I know. Of course I know how much you've done for our home. He squeezed my hand tighter, eyes filled with syrupy sincerity. Your money, my money, aren't they our money? Does it really matter whose name is on the deed? Don't you trust our relationship? There it was again. That same script, wrapping cold calculation in the language of the love and a trust. As if any question I asked meant I didn't believe in him. As if wanting fairness made me materialistic. As if I were the one tarnishing our pure love. A case I once handled flashed through my mind. A woman who had been persuaded, with the same line, we're a family, what's mine is yours, to sell her premarital apartment and invest everything in her husband's company. When they divorced, she walked away with nothing. Back then, I wondered how someone could be so naive. Now, it was my turn. Chapter 6. I looked into Chad's tender, earnest eyes, and from the corner of my vision, I caught his mother watching us, her gaze sharp, satisfied, almost triumphant. In that single moment, all the exhaustion, hurt, and hesitation inside me evaporated. What replaced it was a clean, piercing cold. And clarity. I understood. From beginning to end, this had all been a setup. A perfectly tailored trap, designed for me. Anna, don't be mad, okay? Chad nudged my arm gently when I stayed silent, coaxing me the way you'd calm down a stubborn child. It's not worth getting upset over something so small. I took a long breath. When I lifted my eyes again, my face had already settled into a soft, agreeable smile. I nodded lightly and said, "All right. I believe you." Inside, I reminded myself. Never underestimate the darkness in human nature. And never forget my mother's last words. She told me to trust what's written plainly in black and white. Today, I had let go of the black and white that should have been mine. But I prepared another one. That night, back in my tiny rental apartment, I opened my laptop and created a new encrypted folder. I named it Evidence Chain, Chad's $600,000 housing loan. I saved everything inside, a screenshot of the bank transfer slip for the 600,000 yuan I sent that afternoon, and my chat history with Chad discussing the down payment. Then I opened the cloud backup for my recorder. I clipped out the section from the sales office today that syrupy speech Chad made about saving money for our little home. And I saved it under a new file name. Exhibit 1, Fraud Disguised as Frugality. Chapter 7. A week before we were supposed to get our marriage license, they held what was essentially an ambush dinner. The venue was a private room in one of the nicest restaurants in town. Booked by Chad's family. Officially, it was a pre-wedding family meeting. At the table, his mother played the role of the warm, bustling hostess. Her enthusiasm dripping with the same sweetness as poisoned honey. She piled food into my bowl, and every sentence of motherly love felt like a needle dipped in venom. Anna, darling, we'll all be one family soon. If Chad ever bullies you, I'll be the first to teach him a lesson. Chad held my hand under the table, staring at me with syrupy affection, as if we were the most perfect, deeply in love couple on earth. A few rounds of drinks in and several dishes later, the atmosphere had settled into a comfortable buzz. And the real show finally began. Chad's mother reached into her Hermes handbag and slowly pulled out a brown envelope. Her smile was benevolent, like a kindly goddess in a temple. Anna, we're all reasonable people here. It's better to speak openly now so everyone feels secure. It's not that I don't trust you, dear. It's just that the world is complicated, and people can change. Sign this, and it'll give Chad some protection, and give you peace of mind too. She slid the document toward me. On the cover, a few gold-stamped words burned into my eyes. Prenuptial agreement. Inside, I laughed coldly. Outside, I kept my expression calm and reached for it. Chad's cousin, fresh off passing the bar exam and already acting like she owned the legal profession, immediately scooted closer like a dog eager to earn praise. Cousin Anna, my brother and my aunt are doing this for your good. She gestured grandly, lecturing me like she was the judge of the universe. This is what all the big city couples do now. Asset separation. Got it? It means my brother's planning for the future financially. You just need to enjoy the good life with him. I ignored the circus of clowns and opened the agreement. The black and white text on the A4 pages was a meticulously crafted execution ground. Clause 1. The premarital property, the apartment for which I paid a 600,000 down payment, shall belong solely to Chad. Clause 2. I, Anna, confirm that the 600,000 yuan I contributed toward the property constitutes an unconditional gift to Chad. The word gift seared into my retinas like a branding iron. Clause 3. After marriage, all of Anna's income shall be considered marital property. Chad's bonuses, commissions, and investment returns shall be considered his personal property. So I was supposed to work like a mule while he enjoyed the luxury. Clause 4. In the event of divorce, Anna voluntarily relinquishes custody rights to any future children. Brutal. Utterly brutal. Even a child I hadn't met, hadn't conceived, had already been placed on their bargaining table as leverage. Chapter 8. I flipped through the pages one by one, my fingertips cold. But my mind was still and bottomless as a deep well. For 5 years, I had seen husbands pull the oxygen tubes from dying wives. I had seen children scatter ashes while fighting over inheritance. I thought I'd already witnessed every shade of human cruelty. I never expected the cruelest version to arrive dressed so neatly and wrapped in the words, "It's for your own good." Seeing that I stayed silent for a long time, Chad took my icy hand and began the performance he excelled at. Anna, don't overthink it. This is just paperwork, just something to put my mom at ease. He lowered his voice, his tone dripping with that fatal charm he relied on. Is our relationship really weaker than a few sheets of paper? You love me so much, don't tell me you can't give me this little bit of trust? His mother chimed in immediately. Exactly, Anna. It's all just procedure. We're family. No one is actually keeping score. Family? I finally finished the last page. And under the weight of all their expectant, evaluative, and faintly triumphant stares, I smiled. Not the gentle, compliant smile I used to give, but a cold one. One laced with pity. A smile that saw through everything. Chapter 9. I didn't respond right away. I simply picked up the damp hand towel on the table and began wiping my fingers, slowly, deliberately, one by one. As if I had just touched something filthy. The room, warm and lively a moment ago, froze solid. Chad's smile stiffened on his face. Are you finished? My voice wasn't loud, but every syllable landed like an ice pick. Chad and his mother were both stunned. Before they could answer, I reached into my bag and took out my recorder. Under their bewildered stares, I pressed the pause button with a crisp click. In the dead silence of the private dining room, that sound hit like a bolt of thunder. Chad. Auntie. And you, cousin. I swept my gaze across the table, letting it settle on each of their faces for a beat. From the moment you brought out this agreement, every single word you said has been recorded. Chad's expression collapsed. Anna, what the hell is that supposed to mean? Nothing, I said mildly. I picked up the agreement and tapped my fingertip on the words, unconditional gift. Once, twice, rhythmically. I just thought I'd give you all a quick legal education. What you just did, especially the line about, this is just to make my mom feel better, combined with this wildly one-sided agreement, constitutes all the elements of inducing someone to sign a contract through fraud and coercion. My eyes shifted to the cousin who had just passed the bar. And my smile turned colder. Cousin, didn't your professors teach you Civil Code Article 8? Civil acts must not violate public order and good morals. This agreement lists only my obligations and none of my rights. It blatantly violates the principle of fairness. Stripping me of marital property rights and interfering with my legal custody rights, these clauses are invalid on their face. And you call this financial planning? Did you buy your license? The cousin's face flushed a deep, ugly shade of purple. I didn't bother looking at her again. I turned back to Chad and his mother, both pale as sheets, and flipped the agreement to the last page. I pointed at the gold-embossed law firm logo in the corner. Sterling and Devereaux. One of the top firms in the industry. They bill by the hour, 5 figures to start. To go this far just to cheat someone who supposedly doesn't make much. You really invested in this little scheme. My smile widened. Chapter 10. But unfortunately, I said calmly. This agreement is full of loopholes and blatantly illegal assumptions. At best, it looks like the work of an underpaid intern. What a waste of your money. I paused, letting their horrified, ghost-struck expressions ripen, then dropped the final bomb. Oh, right. I forgot to introduce myself properly. The senior partner of Sterling and Devereaux, attorney Marcus Ellington, is my graduate advisor. Just last week, he was trying to recruit me with a sky-high offer to help him build a new family law division. Before they could react, I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Marcus's number. Then, I hit call. And put it on speaker. The air in the private room felt completely vacuumed out. The call connected, and a calm, authoritative male voice came through clearly. Hello, Anna? Calling me this late, what's going on? Chad and his mother's faces drained from white to gray to the color of ash. I met their collapsing stares and spoke into the phone in a polite, puzzled tone, each word crystal clear. Good evening, Professor Ellington. Sorry to bother you. It's just. I'm looking at a prenuptial agreement issued by your firm, and I found it a little surprising, so I hope to ask the expert himself. I paused, then asked each word with surgical precision. An agreement obtained through fraudulent inducement. With severely unbalanced terms, and clauses that appear to violate the law. Is this a new business direction your firm is expanding into? On the other end, Marcus's voice dropped instantly into raw thunder. Anna. Where are you? Send me that agreement immediately. Every page. Do not alter a single word. The call ended, but the echo of his fury still vibrated through the room. Silence swallowed everything. Chad and his mother's faces were beyond pale, beyond bruised. They were the faces of people whose entire worldview had just collapsed. I folded the prenuptial agreement, the one that represented the combined wisdom of their entire family, nice and neat, and slipped it back into the envelope. Then I stood, picked up my bag, and said, "Let's split the bill." I slid 500 yuan under my plate, didn't spare them another glance, and walked out. Behind me came the crash of overturned dishes and Chad's mother's piercing scream. I didn't turn back. I knew the war had just begun. Chapter 11. I underestimated Chad's shamelessness. Or rather, I overestimated the professional bottom line of someone working in finance. Early the next morning, I was jolted awake by a flood of calls from friends. Anna. Check the trending list right now. Hashtag devoted man Pued by Lawmaster girlfriend. I tapped the link. A carefully edited short video was going viral. The star of the video was Chad. He sat in the unfinished shell of our not yet moved into apartment, his posture desolate, eyes red. The camera panned slowly from his haggard profile to the beer cans scattered on the floor. The soundtrack was one of those tear-jerking emo ballads. The caption was a masterpiece of manipulation. I thought love could conquer everything. I worked hard, scraped together 400,000, she took 600,000 from her family, and we bought a home together. To save a few hundred on mortgage interest, the deed was put in my name, she agreed to it. But I never imagined this would become her evidence that I was scheming against her. My mom only wanted us to sign an agreement to ease everyone's mind. She secretly recorded us, accused us of fraud, and even called her mentor, a top attorney, to threaten my entire family. I'm just an ordinary man. I don't know the law. But I know love. Now I don't know whether to believe in the law or in love. At the end, he added a screenshot of a supposed 400,000 transfer he made to me, along with our old sweet couple photos. The comment section was in absolute chaos. Holy crap, this woman's manipulative as hell. Just because she's got a law degree she thinks she can bully her boyfriend? Recording him? What kind of gold-digging operation is this? Who brings a recorder to a relationship? Poor guy, he looks like such an honest man, totally controlled by this high-educated girl. Who would marry a woman like that? Being with her is like going to court every day. Terrifying. Under Chad's instructions, his friends and relatives rushed into the comments to confirm my supposed crimes. His cousin, the one who had just barely passed the bar exam, jumped in as a legal professional, accusing me of abusing legal knowledge and lacking basic morality. Overnight, I became the internet's public enemy, a scheming, manipulating gold digger. This tactic of Chad's had a name. Reputation assassination. He was trying to drown me in public spit. Before the truth ever had a chance to surface. I didn't argue with them on any platform. A fight in the comments section is the lowest form of combat. Chapter 12. I spent an hour organizing all the evidence into one folder. I named the folder, Gift or Loan. A legal breakdown triggered by a prenuptial agreement. Exhibit 1, my mother's insurance payout statement and 5 years of bank records from my salary account, clearly proving the legal source of the 600,000. Exhibit 2, complete screenshots of my chat history with Chad, including his acknowledgement of receiving the 600,000 for the house, along with every instance of him belittling my profession and emotionally manipulating me. Exhibit 3, a full scanned copy of that loophole-filled prenuptial agreement. I marked every illegal or morally violating clause in red ink and attached the corresponding articles from the Civil Code and the Law on the Protection of Women's Rights. Exhibit 4, the audio recording from the ambush dinner. I didn't include the full recording, only the parts where Chad and his mother said, in their own voices, "This is just to reassure my mom, and this is a gift." Finally, I turned on my webcam and recorded a 5-minute video. In the video, I wore no makeup. My logic was clear. My tone was calm. Hello everyone, I'm Anna, the scheming law master from the trending topic. I don't intend to take up public resources, but as a legal professional, I have the obligation and the responsibility to use my own experience to give a brief lesson on prenuptial property law. I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I simply presented each piece of evidence, one by one, and explained the law behind each point. Chad says the house deed has only his name to save on interest. Legally, this is called purchasing under another's name, and the risks are extremely high. He never informed me of these legal risks. Legally, that constitutes concealing important facts. He says the $600,000 I contributed was a gift. But this agreement was presented to me without prior notice, disguised as a family dinner, using emotional pressure to coerce me into signing it. This is called a manifestly unfair contract, and I have the right to request its revocation. As for the recording, it was for self-protection. When your fiancé's family lays a document in front of you designed to strip you of everything, trust me, recording is the most rational choice you can make. At the end of the video, I looked straight into the camera. My mother taught me to trust what's written in black and white. Today, I'm using black and white to show everyone the truth. My $600,000 was not a gift. It was a loan. I will file a lawsuit immediately to recover my lawful property. I posted the video and a long written explanation simultaneously on my personal blog and the largest local forum. The title was the same as the folder's name. Then I tagged Chad, along with his loudmouthed cousin. If it's a war, it should be fought in the open. Chapter 13. The internet exploded instantly. Within half an hour, public opinion completely flipped. Chad panicked. He never expected me to confront him publicly under my real name, and even less expected my evidence chain to be airtight. His victim-playing narrative collapsed instantly under my legal breakdown. He began frantically deleting comments and trying to control the replies, but it was already too late. My video was reposted by major legal creators and news media. The headline changed from "A devoted man PUA'd by law graduate" to "A textbook counterattack against a manipulative man." In his growing fear, Chad made the stupidest decision possible. He secretly listed the apartment on the biggest real estate platform in the city, marked as urgent sale. He wanted to sell it before the court could open a case and move the money out of reach. He thought I needed time to deal with the legal procedures. But he forgot, no one understands procedure better than I do. The day after he listed the apartment, I submitted an application for pre-litigation property preservation to the court. Clear transfer records, chat logs explicitly confirming the down payment, and the prenuptial agreement he himself had presented with the property details written right on it. All of it formed a perfect loop of evidence. After reviewing the documents, the court issued a civil ruling within 48 hours. The property was seized. All transactions prohibited. While Chad was in his office desperately dealing with his boss's questions, he received a call from the real estate agent. "Sir, sorry to inform you, but we just received notice from the court. Your apartment has been frozen. We've already taken it off the platform." I could imagine his expression in that moment. Utter devastation. Chapter 14. A beast with no way out will always launch the wildest counterattack. Chad used his connections in the securities firm to find out that our legal aid center was expecting a major year-end government grant, one that required a risk assessment by the investment division under his company. This grant was the lifeline of our entire center for the coming year. He began smearing me, reporting to the assessment team that I was morally unfit and involved in a major financial dispute, hinting that my presence would pose a reputational risk to the center. He no longer wanted to destroy just me. He wanted to destroy my career, my belief system. What Chad didn't know was this. For the past 5 years, my job may have looked like low pay, heavy workload, no status. But my network wasn't built on dinner tables or drinking rounds. It was built in case files, and in people's hearts. 3 days after Chad submitted his slanderous report, a a formal letter from the Women's Federation landed directly on the desk of the securities firm's president. The letter highly praised our legal aid center, and me personally, for our outstanding work in protecting the rights of women and children, and stated their intention to establish a long-term strategic partnership with our center. The letter was signed by the newly appointed Director Smith. 3 years ago, she had been a desperate single mother, a victim of domestic violence who had lost custody of her child. I was the one who worked through nights gathering evidence, accompanied her to hearing after hearing, and eventually helped her win back her child, and her life. On the same day, the most influential local newspaper published an in-depth feature. 5 years of a community legal aid lawyer, how a small light reaches the darkest corners. The article described our center's work in detail and interviewed several people we had helped. The longest section was about a migrant worker who had been left permanently injured in a workplace accident and then ruthlessly fired by his factory. I helped him apply for legal aid and fought repeatedly against the factory's elite legal team, eventually securing a 6-figure compensation for him. He is now the chief photojournalist at that newspaper. He wrote that article in tears. With the official endorsement of the Women's Federation and the positive coverage by mainstream media, the grant didn't just stay intact. It was fast-tracked for approval, and the amount was increased by 20%. My network has never been money or power. It is every piece of justice I fought for in those 5 years, and every heart I warmed along the way. Chapter 15. Public opinion can drown a person in just one night. But the iron fist of the capital market can smash someone's livelihood with just one sentence. Monday. Chad was fired. When the news came, I was in the reception room of the Legal Aid Center, explaining how to calculate alimony to an older aunt. Calm as a breeze. Later, I heard a former colleague, who had jumped to Sterling and Devereaux, vividly describe what happened that day. The director slammed a performance evaluation report onto Chad's desk, expressionless, his voice icy. "Chad, your performance this quarter is dead last in the entire department. I was planning to talk to you, see if you needed an adjustment." Before he finished, he grabbed a printed copy of that Metropolitan newspaper article and threw it hard at Chad's face, his voice suddenly erupting. "But now I don't think there's any need. Poor performance is one thing, but you dare drag the company's reputation down with your little personal drama. The hundreds of thousands we spend on PR every year, you think that's for you to clean up your family mess? Because of you, our stock dropped 2 points at market open. 2 points. Do you even know how much money that is?" Chad's face went ashen, and he was still struggling. "Boss, she slandered me. That woman is retaliating." "I don't care who's retaliating against who." The director jabbed a finger at his nose, each word like a verdict. "All I know is that because of you, this company's name is now tied to the scandal of obstructing public welfare. An employee like you, bottom-tier performance, no professional ethics, zero risk awareness, and using the company as your personal weapon, we can't afford to keep. Go to HR, settle your pay, and get out. No room for negotiation. No mercy." The prestigious finance job he was so proud of, the class identity he used to look down on me, evaporated instantly. Carrying a cardboard box, he was escorted out of that towering office building under a mix of sympathetic, disdainful, and gloating stares. Chapter 16. The real nightmare had only just begun. He lost his job, the apartment was frozen, and the court summons had already been delivered. The bank transfers in black and white, along with the chat logs attached to my legal explainer post, made it impossible for him to even hire a lawyer. No lawyer wanted to touch a guaranteed loss case and offend Marcus Ellington of Sterling and Devereaux. His polished, middle-class dream shattered overnight like glass on the pavement. The first to break down was Chad's mom. But she didn't wait for me downstairs at my building. She stormed straight into our legal aid center. That afternoon, she charged in like a madwoman, snot, tears, and hysteria, crying and screaming right at my office door. "Anna. You ungrateful snake. My Chad treated you so well, why would you ruin him like this? You destroyed his job, are you happy now? You vicious, cold-blooded woman." Her voice was so loud that she instantly drew the attention of every staff member and every citizen waiting for consultation. My simple, kind-hearted clients were all stunned. I stepped out of my office. Watching her wild, tear-streaked performance, I felt nothing. If anything, I wanted to laugh. Auntie, this is a government legal service facility. If you keep disrupting public order, I'll have no choice but to call the police. Seeing that I wouldn't give her an inch, she simply sat down on the floor and began slapping her thighs, howling. Everyone look. This woman may have a degree, but she has no conscience. My son worked himself to the bone to buy a house with her, and she turns around and accuses us of fraud. Heaven help us. Studied so hard she turned stupid, lost her humanity along the way. Right then, Director Smith, the woman I helped win back custody 3 years ago, happened to be visiting our center to discuss ongoing collaboration with the Women's Federation. She frowned, stepped forward, and told security, "Please escort this woman out. She is severely disrupting our services." 2 guards lifted Chad's mother up as she thrashed wildly. "Let me go. You're all protecting each other. I'll expose you online." I walked up to her, my voice calm but loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Auntie, first, if you want to expose anything, please use your real name. Anonymous accusations are defamation. Second, your son's $400,000 and my $600,000 are all clearly recorded in the bank statements. And third, and most important." I leaned down slightly, close enough that only she could hear, my voice slow and precise. "If you dare cause a scene at my workplace again, I won't just take back the $600,000. I'll file additional charges and sue your entire family for fraud. Fraud carries jail time. Your son is still young. I doubt he wants to spend the best years of his life behind bars." Her body froze. The madness in her eyes evaporated instantly, replaced by raw terror. Her whole frame went limp as the guards dragged her away. With his mother's physical combat strategy defeated, Chad began bombarding me with messages. From angry accusations, to nostalgic sweet talk, and finally to incoherent begging. I was wrong, Anna, I was really wrong. I shouldn't have listened to my mom. Please, please withdraw the lawsuit. I'll do anything if you just drop it. Give me one more chance, let's start over, okay? Staring at those pathetic words on my screen, I finally sent a reply. Tomorrow, 3 p.m., the cafe on the corner. Bring your cousin, the one who studied law. Chapter 17. The next day, I arrived early. Same beige trench coat, flawless makeup, calm and unhurried. Chad came with his cousin. In just a few days, he looked 10 years older, unshaven, hollow-eyed. His cousin, on the other hand, looked tense, clutching a little notebook like she was marching onto a battlefield. "Anna." Chad's voice was dry, the bloodshot veins in his eyes crawling like spiderwebs. I ignored him and turned to his cousin instead, smiling. "So? Passed the bar. Do you have your license yet? Are you here today as Chad's legal representative?" Her face went pale, but she forced herself to say, "I'm here to provide legal advice." "Good." I nodded, pulled a document from my bag, and slid it across the table. A settlement agreement. Chad's eyes lit up instantly, like he'd just been handed a lifeline. I spoke slowly, deliberately. Things have escalated far enough. I'm tired too. For the sake of what we once had, I'll give you a path out. First, repay the $600,000 I contributed to the down payment. Second, due to your defamatory actions, the damage you caused to my reputation and to our center, and the time and emotional cost of defending myself, you will compensate me an additional $200,000. Third, your mother and you will each handwrite a letter of apology and post them in your Moments and in all your family group chats for 3 days. Chad's cousin shot to her feet. This is extortion. 200,000? Why don't you just rob us? I lifted my coffee, gently blowing on it, not even bothering to look at her. Extortion? Cousin, why don't you recite Article 274 of the Criminal Code for me? This is a lawful civil claim based on your tortious acts. You don't have to agree, no problem. I set the cup down and met her panicked eyes. Then we'll see each other in court. And when we do, I won't just take back the 600,000, I'll hand the judge every piece of evidence I've collected on your attempts to transfer assets and your online defamation. Tell me, do you think the court-ordered damages will be higher or lower than 200,000? Oh, and I almost forgot. Your professor called my professor last week, hoping to get you an internship spot at Sterling and Devereux. Imagine what Attorney Ellington will think when he learns his student helped orchestrate a premarital fraud aimed at his prized mentee. Her face went bloodless in an instant. She collapsed back into her chair, unable to utter a word. Chad panicked completely. He snatched up the agreement like he feared I'd take it away. I'll sign. I'll sign. Anna, as long as you'll withdraw the lawsuit, I'll do anything. I smiled. It must have been a very cold smile. Don't rush. I'm not finished. I tapped the last page of the agreement. Both of you will sign. You, as the debtor. And your cousin, as the legal witness to this settlement. Sign it, transfer the money, send the apology letters, and I'll apply to withdraw the case. I placed my voice recorder openly on the table and pressed record. Now, you two can discuss it. The recording is to protect all three of us, so no one can later claim I coerced or deceived you. Fair, right? Chad and his cousin stared at the recorder as if it were a venomous snake. But they had no choice. This was their only way out. As they scrambled to pull together money and debated how to phrase their apology letters to sound as sincere, but not too humiliating, I lowered my gaze, hiding the cold mockery in my eyes. I picked up my phone and sent a message to Attorney Ellington. Professor, the prey is already in the cage. They've acknowledged the entire settlement on record. This recording is the best evidence of their fraudulent intent and the real harm they caused me. We can now apply for punitive damages. This game, every rule from the beginning has been mine to set. Chapter 18. Chad and his mother moved with terrifying efficiency. 3 days. A heartfelt, tear-stained letter of apology was placed in front of me. In it, Chad was a muddle-headed fool blinded by impulse. His mother was a well-meaning but short-sighted old woman. From beginning to end, they begged me to spare Chad, because he wasn't bad by nature. They even started live streaming their fundraising progress, messaging me every day, 30,000 borrowed today, 20,000 scraped together tomorrow. Their pathetic yet eager tone made it sound as if gathering enough money would earn them a get-out-of-jail-free card. I looked at the letter and smiled. Even now, all they cared about was how to use the smallest cost to extinguish my anger. Unfortunately for them, they prayed to the wrong god. Just when they thought victory was within reach, I received a call from Professor Marcus Ellington. On the other end, his voice was steady as a bell. Anna, the internal review at the firm is complete. The attorney who handled your agreement has been terminated, and the firm is filing with the Bar Association to have his license revoked. To restore the reputation of Sterling and Devereux, and to give you justice, I'll personally represent you. All expenses will be covered by the firm. Holding the phone, I walked to the window. Thank you, Professor. This is what you deserve, he replied, with a faint note of approval in his voice. Your handling was excellent, calm recording, guiding them into admitting fraud themselves, then pinning them down with public opinion and a pre-litigation asset freeze. Anna, many senior lawyers can't do it half as well. I said softly, I learned from the best. No, he said. You learned well because you're you. Prepare yourself. When we go to court, we're not just going to reclaim what's yours, we're going to make sure they understand that greed and stupidity come with a price. After I hung up, I tore their apology letter into tiny pieces. Settlement? My so-called agreement had only been a small escape hole I left for a frightened rat. So it would scramble desperately toward it, only to find a sharpened guillotine waiting on the other side. I needed time for my professor's team to step in, and I needed Chad and his mother to relax completely under the illusion of hope. Now, the blade was ready. Chapter 19. On the day of the hearing, I wore a black suit dress, my heels clicking crisply against the marble floor. Chad and his mother arrived too, bringing along a young, inexperienced lawyer who looked as nervous as a quail. When he saw me, Chad immediately forced a flattering smile, attempting to approach. I gave him a single glance. He froze on the spot. He must have thought today was just a formality before settling. When the judge announced the attorneys for both sides, and the words, plaintiff's counsel, Sterling and Devereaux, Marcus Ellington, echoed through the courtroom, Chad's smile instantly solidified and shattered. He and his mother both snapped their heads toward the sound, eyes wide with horror as they stared at the figure who slowly stepped into the counsel's seat behind me. Marcus Ellington. A towering figure in the legal world. Someone who usually appeared only in high-level financial interviews on TV. And now, he was my attorney? Bang. At the defendant's table, the young lawyer dropped his pen straight onto the floor. His face turned chalk white, cold sweat beading across his forehead, his posture stiff like a statue. In the gallery, Chad's law student cousin, who had come with a smirk, ready to watch the show, now sat with her mouth hanging wide open, enough to fit a whole egg. In that moment, I saw it clearly, the emotion called a despair, crawling across their faces, devouring the last bit of luck they had been clinging to. The hearing began. Their lawyer stood up trembling and presented the most ridiculous argument imaginable. Given that my client and the plaintiff were in a romantic relationship, the payment toward the property should be regarded as a gift between lovers. Before he finished, Professor Ellington didn't even stand, he merely lifted his gaze. Tell me, counsel, are you suggesting that my client took her mother's life-saving money and gifted it to an adult male with stable income so he could buy a house under his own name, and then signed an agreement that would leave her penniless? Are you implying my client has no brain, or that the presiding judge and the jury have no intelligence? The young lawyer's face turned the color of pig's liver. He sat down in humiliation, unable to speak another word. Just then, the cousin in the gallery suddenly jumped to her feet, shouting hysterically, "That's not true. My cousin is also a victim. Anna is the manipulative one, she planned this from the start, she lured us." Order. The judge's gavel slammed down hard as his stern gaze swept across the room. Disrupting courtroom order, bailiffs, remove her. 2 bailiffs dragged the cousin out as she thrashed and screamed, making a complete fool of herself. Chad and his mother had already collapsed limp in their seats. And the show had only just begun. Chapter 20. Professor Ellington rose to his feet and submitted each piece of evidence, his voice calm but every word cutting like a blade. In summary, the defendant's actions constitute fraud of an extremely malicious nature. Therefore, our claims are as follows. First, immediate return of the 600,000 yuan housing payment. Second, interest calculated at 4 times the LPR rate, from the date the funds were transferred. Third, due to the defendant's malicious defamation and attempts to sabotage my client's career, which caused significant emotional harm, we request 200,000 yuan in compensation for emotional distress. We ask the court to uphold all our claims in full. The courtroom fell silent. Chad suddenly lifted his head, eyes bloodshot. He looked at me, lips trembling, as if trying to speak. In the end, his knees buckled, and he slid off his chair entirely, collapsing onto the floor with an animal-like whimper. The gavel struck. The judgment is as follows: all claims of the plaintiff are upheld. It was over. That single strike shattered his family's middle-class dream. They now had to sell the apartment, and even after selling it, they would still owe me a debt they could never repay. But the aftermath of the hearing was far from over. I later heard that Chad's cousin, the one who caused a scene in court, not only ended up permanently blacklisted by Sterling and Devereaux, but was also called in for a personal meeting with her own professor. When she walked out of his office, her eyes were red, her expression hollow. The first lesson of her legal career hadn't come from statutes, but from reality. When someone uses the law for manipulation and greed, the law judges them first. After this case, my name spread quickly throughout the profession. Offers from top law firms poured in like snowflakes. I eventually accepted Professor Ellington's invitation and officially joined Sterling and Devereaux as a core attorney in the family law division. On my first day at work, I proposed that Sterling and Devereaux establish a special public interest fund to collaborate with my former legal aid center, providing free, top-tier legal support to vulnerable people trapped in desperate marriages. Professor Ellington approved it on the spot and pledged full support. Chapter 21. 1 year later. Wearing a perfectly tailored barrister's robe, I helped a woman who had endured years of domestic violence win back custody of her child and everything she deserved. As I stepped out of the courthouse, the sunlight was warm and bright. I instinctively narrowed my eyes, and unintentionally caught sight of a scene in the corner. It was Chad and his mother. They looked even more haggard and worn than a year ago, arguing bitterly with a relative about repaying the money they owed me. I told you not to be so greedy back then, but you wouldn't listen. Oh, now it's my fault? If your son had any ability at all, would he have been played like a fool? It was unpleasant to hear. I looked away without pausing for even a second and walked straight toward the brilliant sunlight. My mother once told me to trust what's written in black and white. Now I finally understand. Real security never comes from a piece of paper, and certainly not from anyone else. It comes from your own expertise, wisdom, and unbreakable spine, by writing, with your own hands, a judgment over your life that no one can overturn.